Welcome back. Today I'm sitting down with Yvonne Etheridge. Yvonne, thanks so much for joining me. Today we're going to talk about how to afford a home in today's market. Affordability is the number one topic in real estate right now. For those of you that don't know Yvonne, she's a fantastic realtor in Reno, Nevada. She's done over 100 transactions, 110 to date, to be exact, over 5 years. 75% of agents in 2025 didn't do a single deal across America, 75%. So all that to say, the reason I tell you that is, she's not just a fly-by-night agent. She knows what she's doing. She's really, really good at what she does. She's got a lot of experience and treats people really well. So Yvonne, thanks for joining. For people that don't know you, do you want to give a brief intro of who you are and what you're about?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm Yvonne. Yeah, I'm a Reno Realtor outside of real estate. Got married a few years ago. I'm a dog mom, love playing softball. I coach a little league team, playing slow pitch. So I'm usually on a ball field somewhere. And yeah, excited to talk home buying today.
Excellent. Let's hop right into it. So let's talk about the first thing someone can do to afford a home in this market. What would you say is step number one?
I feel like it's a loaded question, but I love it. I think the first thing that people need to do is actually sit down and learn their actual numbers. They always hear say go talk to a lender, go talk to a lender. But really what it's about is understanding your actual situation. I think people assume it's going to take more than it really does, assume they might not be qualified, and just kind of count themselves out before actually knowing what they can do. There's so many different options out there. There's too many different options and strategies to ever, give everyone. But when somebody actually sits down and learns a little bit about here's what it actually takes, here's what your options might be, more often than not, the anxiety about it eases. And most people find it's not as bad as they think it might be.
Yeah.
But we're just, people are constantly using Zillow calculators and all these other tools that are available to us. And they can be really misleading. So
Yeah.
it really just comes down to, dig into your actual situation, do the boring legwork that nobody really wants to do.
Absolutely. I am a lender in Northern Nevada and both licensed in Nevada and California. And I will say online lenders, they draw you in by telling you things that you want to hear. And oftentimes they're not 100% accurate. So it's great to use mortgage calculators, but be careful. The biggest benefit, I think, and I think you would agree with me on this, is when someone gets an application in with a lender, you're going to figure out exactly what range your monthly payment's going to be in based on different scenarios. And you're also going to learn what your cash to close, meaning cash out of pocket that you bring to the closing table, is going to be. And knowing that as soon as possible helps ease the anxiety, just like you said. I know you off camera had mentioned a story about a recent couple who was buying a home that had a little bit of a hurdle to overcome. Tell us that story and why getting pre-approved so early is important.
Yeah. When I think it's super common for people to say, I'm not in a hurry, which is great. We don't want to be making big financial decisions in a hurry at all. But had a couple that, everyone's casually looking on Zillow, getting the listings, things like that. They fell in love with the home. They went to the open house, continued to fall in love with it. And they're like, okay, we're ready now. I was like, okay, well, you still need to get that application in and everything. And most people, if you have good credit, you have decent income, you think you're going to be fine. Well, they turned in their application and learned in that process they didn't qualify because of some debts and some other things that weren't super obvious. And so going through that emotional heartbreak of falling in love with a home and then learning you can't have it is, truly the worst experience.
Yeah.
And so, these are things that lenders can work to solve with you with enough, time and strategy.
Correct.
So that when that dream home comes up, you're prepared. Because no one's in a hurry until they are. And then you got to figure it all out, within a day or two. And it just kind of creates unnecessary stress in the process.
Correct. And there are some things on the application that can be navigated with enough time, like you said, whether that's credit that can be raised or whether that's debts that can be erased through creative solutions. There's certain things to be able to do given enough time. But if you don't have enough time, it's hard to do that. And obviously, I'm a lender. I make money by closing loans, but we're not here to push you into buying a home. Like, it's not about rushing into buying a home. That's not what we're about. So
I do think, though, to your point, that I do think a lot of people feel like if they do, give all their information to a lender, you're almost like kind of committing to them or to the process. And I know it's scary to you need a lot of information, right? All your W-2s, tax returns, and all of that. But it is the most educational and free process. If you were to go through it all, learn all your numbers and say, great, we're going to work on this for the next year as we're saving, that's fantastic. But I think there is this opposition to kind of moving forward with that process out of like the fear and anxiety of it.
100%. And I will say the mortgage industry has done a terrible job of making people feel comfortable, because you know what happens if you go, let's say, to Rocket Mortgage or any online lender, you input your info and your phone doesn't stop ringing. It is so annoying. Local lenders, I'm not like that. Most local lenders are not like that, just because we're regular people and we don't have quotas of calls that we have to hit. So
Yeah.
anyways,
But I mean, I think on the realtor side as well, there's probably plenty out there that for any reason, like, might be inadvertently putting pressure, because we're excited. We want to help you buy or whatever, but finding the right like advisory team, your realtor and your lender, that can slow it down, make it really clear, just give you clarity over time. Like, the right realtor and the right lender are not going to pressure you into buying. We just want to advise and guide. And so, when folks' strategy is waiting for things to become more affordable, that's where you and I are like, because we know it's not, like, waiting is not the solution. Have a lot of solutions, but we got to be ready to start to entertain them.
let's talk about at the end. We'll get through the other things to do to make it more affordable, but I do want to circle back on waiting versus going now. So let's bookmark that and come back to it. What's the second thing somebody can do to help afford a home in this market? I've got my list here.
Yeah, there's some strategies that most people don't know about until you're in it, where we can, get funds from the seller to either bring down your closing costs or pay for a better interest rate.
Wait, you're telling me the seller can pay for my closing costs right down my rent?
Absolutely. Yeah.
How does
Some
that
of them
work?
have to. So it's actually pretty simple in the offer process. Now, if you're competing against a lot of other offers, it's still a strategy. You could bump up your purchase price a
So I
little
can
bit.
do this at any time. It
You
doesn't
just
matter if it's competitive.
If it's competitive, you got to be a little bit more intentional, and you may not get this massive credit that you would be able to maybe on a home that has been sitting for a little while. But I've used this strategy whether we're in multiple offer situations or not. And it can be super impactful on your monthly payment or your closing costs, whichever one, or a little bit of both, to just try to put all the pieces together to like meet your financial goals. So there's so many strategies to get to the end game. I do think a lot of people look at just the purchase price and they're like, okay, I know I can do this purchase price, but we don't actually know what that means. And it can look so many different ways in your actual monthly payment, depending on seller credits, buying your rate down, or things like that. So the strategy we're using the most right now is asking for a seller credit, getting your interest rate knocked down a few points, and then meeting that monthly payment goal.
Yep.
And when you get with the lender ahead of time, you learn these strategies to say, hey, you can shop at, this price point, $450. But hey, if you're able to get a seller credit, you could actually be looking around $480, $490 if you're able to get this credit. And so learning that gives you just a lot more options to help like make it a reality.
Do you mind if I give a real world example of what this looks like?
Please do.
So most sellers, they only care about their net proceeds, which means the purchase price or the sales price minus all the fees. Let's say you're buying a home. Let's use round numbers here, 400,000. All right. And let's say you don't ask for a seller credit. They're going to net, let's say, 375. As a buyer, what you can do is you can offer them, instead of 400,000 with no seller credit, you can offer them 415, but then have them give you a $15,000 seller credit. And it's all the same as offering them 400,000 with no seller credit. It's all the same to them. They don't care typically. The cool thing is, and a lot of buyers don't know this, is that actually raising the purchase price and asking for a seller credit to buy down the rate actually lowers your monthly payment much more than just reducing a purchase price. So that's a little bit of a hack. Typically, it only makes sense to do it if you're going to be in the home for, multiple years, right? You don't want to do this and because you are offering a little bit higher price. But, work with Yvonne. She'll walk you through all that and help you with that. So
Yeah, but we all tend to just see the purchase prices. So we like live in that world
yeah,
and don't see like kind of all the back end of how that got to a monthly payment. So
correct. It's basically just like, hey, seller, let me give you a little more on the purchase price and you give me money
yeah,
back.
give me a better rate.
Yeah, exactly. Which is great. So number 3, let's talk about that on the list. We said buy an ugly home.
Ah, buying the ugliest home in the best neighborhood.
You think that can help increase affordability?
I really do. I think that especially first time home buyers in this like affordability challenge, you got to look at your situation and think, am I willing to sacrifice on either location, the size of the home, or like the quality of upgrades? Maybe I'm willing to buy a home that, was built in the 80s or 90s, maybe hasn't been updated since. You've got a bunch of different paint colors. You've got old carpet. You've got, not your ideal countertops. But if you're willing to purchase a home that needs updating and then over time do your own updates, I think that's the biggest hack right now is buy the home that needs the updating and do it yourself. You're going to be in a better financial position than or you're just gonna be able to get into a home sooner.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I actually agree with this wholeheartedly. I actually have people close to me that bought a home. They got a steal because it was in such bad condition.
Yeah.
They're a little handy. They painted their own walls. They fixed their own fixtures. They basically did everything except bathroom remodels, which that came down the road. But early on, they did new paint, new flooring, new door handles, new, like everything that's basic, new outlets, right? Outlet covers, all that. But it was really the paint and the flooring and the furniture. Instantly, like $50,000 worth of equity.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. And I think that's something that for folks that are willing to consider that route, you're gonna get into a home faster.
100%.
And then you get to choose your upgrades, just as much as people want like the move-in ready and the new and the shiny. Some people I work with are kind of tired of the same, trendy flip, the gray and the white kitchens, all that. So you get to just choose your own stuff. And like, yes, flooring isn't free, paint isn't free, but it's a lot less expensive if you get in a less expensive home and do those things yourself. And it's pretty satisfying too to like do your own,
100%.
even just like paint and little fixtures and whatnot. Like hire the professionals for the big stuff. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. Sacrificing on upgrades, doing them yourself. Yeah.
Sweat equity.
Yeah.
Number 1. I love sweat equity. I highly recommend, especially for people's first home. Typically what happened, I know for us, we did it in our first home. And after that, we're like, man, I don't know if we're going to do this again. But it didn't matter now because there's enough equity. We don't necessarily have to. So, all right. Number 4, we talked about realize your first home is not going to be your dream home.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, if your first home is your dream home, I usually tell people you're not dreaming big enough. So the first home is just like the way in. As prices continue to rise, folks that already have a home usually aren't bothered by that because their home price, the value of their home is increasing as well. And so, yeah, that first home is just your ticket in. The sooner you can get into the market, take advantage of appreciation, the better off you're going to be. It's just such a long-term game that it's not fun. It's not sexy in the beginning to think about your long-term appreciation, to think about 5, 10, 15 years from now. And so I think that's sometimes why that's a tough pill to swallow if you're buying a home that doesn't check all your boxes.
Yeah.
It needs to meet your lifestyle needs to an extent, but if we're looking for like perfection in that first home with all the shiny upgrades and everything, it's just going to take you longer and longer to find. And the longer we wait, that's appreciation opportunities that we've missed. So
yeah, and the market does go down sometimes, like '08. We all lived through '08. If you're younger, I'm 30. If you're anywhere around 30, you lived through '08. The market does go down sometimes, but our economy as a whole in the United States of America is built on growth. If the economy stops growing, it all falls apart. That's just how it's set up. I mean, it's set up to just continue to appreciate. So yeah, the earlier you can get on the train, moving on the tracks, the more you're not going to care whether or not the train keeps moving, right?
Yeah.
Because you're on the train.
I know a lot of people like in this same conversation are like, well, like maybe if prices just go down a little bit. And it's something I think about this a lot of, when we're having conversations with sellers about pricing their home, sometimes there's like this reality check bringing them back down that it's not, 2021 anymore. And I always think about like, if something were to happen and prices were to drop, they just wouldn't sell. Like, there's no way. There's plenty of people that are like, well, I'm just in my forever home.
Yeah.
And then there would be no inventory and prices would stabilize. Like, it just almost just like can't happen with supply and demand economics.
100%. Well, let's talk about rates dropping too. We hear a lot about, oh, rates are, this. And it's like, well, let me tell you, you know how many times I've heard someone say, I'm waiting for rates to drop. You know how many people are out there are going to jump on it if rates are in the 5s or the 4s? Like, there's going to be so much more demand that it all is going to shake out the same, if not worse for you.
Specifically for like the starter home type price point too.
Much demand.
It would terrify me if rates got even into the 5s, only because I've had several listings lately that are in the 400 range, like mid 4s or high 4s. And in this market, they might be getting 5 to 10 offers, depending on the neighborhood. Rates go down. Now it's 15 to 20 offers. And so I would rather have, less competition than a lower rate that I can't even get into a home with.
Yeah, 100%. And you talked about the 3 things in a house: location, size, and quality. Do you want to talk about sacrificing one of those?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, when we are, budgets are tight, or depending on what we're looking for, what's going to meet the needs of our family. If we can't have all 3, like the numbers don't work for your financials and your monthly payment goal, usually it's a matter of, okay, are we willing to look in maybe a different location that might be a little bit more affordable? Or are we willing to just have a little bit of a smaller home in the name of our long-term, financial goals? Or kind of what we were talking about, are you willing to buy the home that needs a ton of upgrading? Still got the 70s shag carpet and, wallpaper everywhere, things like that. I feel like we have to concede on one of those 3 in the name of getting into that first home to build for the future. So usually I find most people are kind of opening up their options on like location. As long as it still fits their lifestyle and whatnot. But for some people, we're just looking at nearby neighborhoods that might be a little bit more favorable.
All right. Last bullet point. Do we want to get into ways to basically, make a little bit more money and save a little bit more money?
Yeah. That's the hardest one.
That is the hardest one. So yeah, let's talk about that. Is there a side hustle you might be able to pick up on the weekends? Could you go ask your boss for a raise? I mean, obviously you're going to want to justify why you're asking, right?
Yeah.
So be smart about that. Could you maybe switch companies and get paid a little more if you do that? Right? What have you seen in your career?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, I only was in 2 different kind of corporate environments and then jumped into real estate. And so that was my way to make more money. So I'm not saying everyone needs to jump into real estate. People already do that too much. But I think it comes down to being really mindful of what you're spending. I know that doesn't increase your income, but whole lifestyle creep.
Yeah, it's a real thing.
Is a very real thing that gets people out of the range of feeling like they're able to buy. So, it is fun to drive nice new fancy cars, but it does limit your ability to buy a home, with massive car payments or things like that. That's just the easiest one to point to. And so I think it's, looking at what you're spending, look at what you spend in rent. Okay, what is a realistic monthly payment going to be, because you've maybe talked to a lender and gotten an idea based on what you want. Mm-hmm. What's the difference there? And is that a difference you can stomach? Mm-hmm. Can you start to, pretend to pay it? If your monthly payment right now, you're paying $2,500 in rent, plenty of mortgage payments are $3,000. Do you have another $500 to pay? Can you practice even $2,750, and set aside that extra little bit? Right. And see how that impacts your financials. This is the toughest one, I feel like.
Yeah, 100%. It's a tough conversation to have with yourself and others around you, but I think it's a great thing to start thinking about is how can I make more money and also not spend more as I make more. So I did want to circle back to the market of Reno-Tahoe in general, right? We talked about this previously off camera. Let's talk about the supply and demand and what you see in the market currently.
Yeah. It's really interesting because at different price points, I feel like it's kind of a different story. At the lower price points in the 400s and 500s,
So you're talking starter homes, first time
yeah,
homes.
there is a lot of competition.
There's a lot of demand.
A lot of demand.
Yeah.
And at the higher price points, maybe like 700, 800, 900,000, it makes sense. There's a little bit less demand and there's kind of plenty of choices.
Yeah.
And so I'm just finding homes in that 700, 800 range are sitting a lot longer than the homes in the 400 or 500 range. It's just buyers can be more picky at that price point, given the inventory. So you do have to be the prettiest, the best price at that price point. And yeah, in that, there's just a lot more people that are trying to get into that first home at the 400 and 500 range. And so for buyers that are going to be in that situation, like being prepared is everything.
Yeah. You've been in Reno a while.
Yeah.
What have you seen in that entry level home range? Like where were things 5, 8 years ago compared to where they are now?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll go back to like my first home that it was sitting on the market for a good while and, needed a little bit of work and whatnot. It was in like the low to mid 400s. That was 2020. Now it's probably in the high fives. Granted, it's that old Northwest neighborhood too. If you're in a good rental market, you're near the university, like a location a lot of people want to be in. For folks that bought their home like 2020 and prior, that equity is pretty massive.
Yeah.
And I think those markets are going to stay really strong. Like we've got the university, there's plenty of growth happening like all around there. That's just where people want to be.
Yeah. I'm so bullish on Reno long term.
Yeah.
And the one thing I want to mention too, and I always try to tell people this as much as possible, is like Reno reminds me of the Bay Area in such that
Be careful who you say that to.
the land in which homes sit on is surrounded by things in which you cannot build on. To the west, in the Bay Area, you've got the ocean. To the east, you've got mountains. In Reno, to the west, you've got the mountains. In the east, you've got BLM land. It's not Texas. I came from Texas. You can literally build and build and build and build and build until the cows come home, and there's still land to build on.
Yeah.
You can't do that in Reno. So as demand increases over time, which Reno's getting nicer, even in the 8 years I've been here, it's gotten so much nicer.
Yeah.
People still think Reno's not nice. They haven't been to Reno in a while. That's how I know like we're on the cusp of exploding in Reno. I don't think waiting is a great idea. If like there could be a day where a starter home is 600,000, 700,000, and that might be in less than 10 years. We'll see. I believe that's where we're headed though. And so I just want people to live in the reality of where things are at. That's what I see. That's what I predict based on other case studies, land constraint, high demand. I mean, supply and demand, right? It goes back to that every time.
See how far up we can go on Pyramid Highway.
Exactly. Yvonne, thank you so much for joining me. Is there anything you want to add before we hop off?
Oh gosh. I don't think I have anything.
Well, thank you. For anybody else wants to work with Yvonne, her contact info is going to be in the description below. Reach out. She's great. She'll treat you well and give you all the advice you need and everything in between. So, Yvonne, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. It's been awesome.